The 1,000-year peace was over. The 1,000-year peace had finally come to an end. War had been declared. "The humans are laughing at us," Supreme Commander Zorthak reported bitterly, his voice rumbling through the command bridge. Lieutenant Vex stood at her console, her violet skin darkening into a deeper hue, the Crexian equivalent of a blush of shame. "They aren't just laughing, Supreme Commander," she said, her voice low, edged with humiliation. "They're mocking us." Zorthak's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sharp, involuntary flicker that betrayed agitation in his species. His upper limbs clenched the arms of his massive command chair so hard that the reinforced alloy beneath them groaned and bent. "Replay the transmission," he growled. The view screen crackled, then steadied. A human woman's face appeared, auburn hair cropped close to her head, eyes the bright blue of Earth's oceans. "Admiral Tessa Monroe, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces." "Let me get this straight," she said, a sly smile tugging at her lips, making no attempt to hide the derision in her tone. "You, the mighty Crexian Empire, are threatening humanity with war, all because we refuse to grant you exclusive mining rights on some uninhabited rock at the edge of our solar system?" Zorthak's secondary heart thundered in his chest. The audacity, the disrespect, the utter absence of fear. He remembered the words he had spoken to her during their first exchange, his voice heavy with the weight of an empire that had conquered a dozen galaxies. "We are the Crexian Empire. Our fleets blot out suns. Our soldiers number in the trillions. The 1,000-year treaty your ancestors signed has expired, and we will not renew it. Surrender now or face extinction." And what had this human done? She had laughed. Actually laughed. "You realize," Monroe continued in the playback, her voice carrying an edge of amusement, "we've been watching you for the past 1,000 years, right? Monitoring your transmissions, studying your technology, analyzing your tactics." Her eyes gleamed as she leaned slightly closer to the screen. "The treaty wasn't for our protection. It was for yours." The bridge fell silent. 50 of the Empire's highest-ranking officers stared at their commander, waiting for his reaction. "She's bluffing," whispered Science Officer Krell, her voice barely above a breath. "They must be bluffing." "Are they?" Zorthak demanded, his 4 eyes turning toward Intelligence Director Lormar. "Explain this reaction. Why aren't they cowering? Why aren't they begging for mercy? They are one species, bound to one star system." Lormar stepped forward, his exoskeleton clicking nervously as he spoke. "Supreme Commander, our intelligence on humans is limited. The treaty barred any close observation. When we first encountered them, they were primitive. They'd just learned spaceflight. Their weapons were chemical. Their medicine still involved cutting open flesh and stitching it back together. And now," Zorthak pressed, his tone sharp as a blade. Lormar hesitated. "We don't know. The treaty kept us 5 light-years from their system. Over the centuries, we've detected strange energy readings, but nothing conclusive. It's possible they've advanced." Zorthak snorted, the sound harsh. "In a mere 1,000 years? Impossible. No species develops that quickly. It took us 15,000 years to master interstellar travel." "With respect, Commander," Fleet Admiral Dex interjected, her facial tendrils curling anxiously, "perhaps we should send a scout ship to evaluate their capabilities before committing to a full invasion." "Cowardice," Zorthak snapped, his voice like thunder. "From my own fleet admiral, no less. We are Crexian. We do not scout. We do not assess. We conquer." Dex's tentacles twisted tighter, but she didn't back down. "If there's even the smallest chance the human was telling the truth." "Enough!" Zorthak roared, his massive frame rising to its full, imposing 12 feet. His voice filled the bridge like a storm. "Prepare the armada. All ships. All warriors. We will darken their skies. We will boil their oceans. And we will remind these humans what it means to face the might of the Crexian Empire." The bridge erupted in motion. Officers scrambled to relay orders, their voices hurried, their movements sharp. Zorthak turned back to the frozen image of Admiral Monroe. She was still smirking, still daring him. Then her voice echoed again from the recording. "One more thing," she said lightly, just before cutting the transmission. "When you come, bring something interesting. We've been stuck in this solar system for 1,000 years, with nothing to do but prepare for your return. We're really looking forward to seeing what you've got." The screen went dark. Zorthak stood frozen, a sensation creeping through him, something he hadn't felt in centuries. Was it doubt? He shook his head violently, banishing the thought. "Director Lormar," he barked, regaining his composure. "What is the human military capacity?" Lormar checked his datapad, claws clicking against the device. "Based on a 1,000-year-old assessment, 50 million soldiers. 10,000 primitive spacecraft. And our forces? 10 trillion warriors across the Empire," Lormar replied quickly. 500 million already stationed on our capital ship. Our armada, 100,000 warships, each capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten rock. Zorthak's shoulders eased slightly. Numbers didn't lie. Even if humans had progressed, there was no way they could rival that. "There's one other thing, Supreme Commander," Lormar added, his voice hesitant. Zorthak's 4 eyes fixed on him. "Speak." The laugh that wouldn't leave him. "Our earliest assessments of humans noted a strange psychological trait," Director Lormar had once reported. "When threatened, they don't cower. They grow aggressive. And their view of mortality is peculiar. They know they will die, yet they act as though they cannot. It makes their behavior unpredictable." Zorthak dismissed the observation with a flick of his massive appendage. "Psychological quirks won't save them from plasma fire," he growled. "Set course for the Sol system. Maximum velocity." The Crexian armada stirred, a black tide of destruction sweeping across light years, tens of thousands of warships moving as one. But even as the fleet accelerated toward its target, Supreme Commander Zorthak found himself haunted, not by fear of battle, but by the echo of something stranger. The laugh. It wasn't the chuckle of someone bluffing. It wasn't the laugh of a fool. It was the laugh of someone who knew something he didn't. And for the first time in his 300-year life, Zorthak felt a chill trace his spine. The journey to Earth lasted 3 standard weeks. 3 weeks of relentless preparation. 3 weeks of brutal battle simulations. 3 weeks of Zorthak standing before his officers, assuring them that this invasion would be swift and glorious. And 3 weeks of trying and failing to forget that laugh. "We are nearing the boundary of the Sol system, Supreme Commander," Navigator Zell announced on the 21st day. "We'll cross Pluto's orbit in 5 minutes. Zorthak nodded. His ceremonial silver armor gleamed under the bridge lights. He had dressed for triumph. "Have they detected us?" Officer Trill scanned her console, antennae trembling. "No signs, Commander. No transmissions. No defenses. The system appears completely open." "Overconfidence," Zorthak muttered darkly. "The surest herald of defeat." The Crexian fleet crossed into human space. Every officer on the bridge braced for alarms, for some sign of Admiral Monroe's mysterious confidence to reveal itself, for human defenders to rise. Nothing happened. "Continue the approach," Zorthak ordered. "Maintain battle formation." The armada slid deeper into the solar system, gliding past Neptune, then Uranus. Still nothing. By the time they reached Saturn's orbit, Zorthak allowed himself a breath of relief. Perhaps the humans really were bluffing. Perhaps centuries of isolation had driven them insane. "Supreme Commander." Science Officer Krell's voice cut the calm like a blade. "I'm detecting anomalous readings from Saturn's rings." Zorthak's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The rings, they're moving," Krell said, her voice uncertain. "Moving. Sections are shifting, not following orbital mechanics." Before Zorthak could respond, the tactical displays flared with alert. The rings of Saturn were breaking apart. Not in chaos. in perfect, deliberate motion. Krell's voice fell to a whisper. It's not ice. Zorthak's secondary heart kicked hard against his ribs. Then what is it? Her mandibles clicked. They're not ice and rock, Commander. They're ships, Zorthak finished grimly, staring as horror clawed through him. Millions, no, billions, of tiny vessels peeled away from the camouflage they'd worn for 1,000 years. For centuries they'd looked like harmless debris, fragments of frozen rock and dust. Until they moved. Incoming transmission, Trill stammered, her voice trembling. The main screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Monroe. She stood on a bridge that made their flagship look ancient, smooth, advanced, alive with silent power. "Welcome to Sol, Commander Zorthak," she said cheerfully, as if greeting an old acquaintance. "I see you brought the whole family. How thoughtful." Zorthak's claws tightened on the armrest. "What is the meaning of this deception? Where did these ships come from?" "Deception?" Monroe raised a single eyebrow. "No deception. Just preparation." She gestured lazily at the endless swarm behind her. "As for the ships, we built them. All 10 billion of them. We had plenty of time, you know. 1,000 years of it." "That's impossible," Zorthak thundered. "No civilization could construct so many vessels." Monroe tilted her head slightly, smiling faintly. "Oh, that's right. You still build ships by hand. How quaint." Her smirk widened just enough to sting. "We automated that process about 800 years ago. These days, our fabricators produce a fully functional warship every 1.3 seconds. She paused. "Do the math. Weapons status?" Zorthak barked to his tactical officer. "All systems ready. Target their fleet. Fire." Monroe sighed audibly on the screen, almost bored. "Really? That's your move? All right then." The Crexian armada unleashed its fury. 100,000 capital ships fired as one. Plasma beams and energy weapons ripped across the void, a storm so fierce it could have cracked a planet apart. Space lit up, brilliant and deadly. Any ordinary fleet would have been obliterated. But the human ships moved. Not just evasive maneuvers, fluidity. They didn't just dodge fire, they danced through it. They spun, twisted, and reformed with impossible precision, their movements too sharp, too graceful to be piloted by living beings. Some ships accelerated so fast the G-forces should have crushed any organic crew into paste. "They're not manned," Krell gasped, realization dawning. On the screen, Monroe's smirk deepened. "Correct again. They're autonomous. We call them the Swarm." Her voice carried a quiet pride. "Fully AI-controlled. They've been running combat simulations against Crexian tactics for about 900 years now." Her smile was almost playful. "They're very, very good at it." The first taste of defeat. Not a single human vessel had been hit. Not one. Admiral Monroe's smirk faded, her voice dropping into something calmer, sharper. "Our turn," she said. "Just a small demonstration. A mere fraction of the human swarm, 1,000 ships out of the billions, broke formation and surged forward. Tiny things compared to the hulking Crexian capital ships, no larger than planetary shuttles. Defensive screens at maximum," Zorthak barked. The human ships didn't fire. They didn't need to. They drifted through the Crexian shields as if they didn't exist, passing straight through the shimmering barriers meant to protect the fleet. Then they touched the hulls of 20 Crexian warships, and phased right through solid metal as if it were mist. Seconds later, those 20 warships simply ceased to exist. No explosions. No debris fields. The ships unraveled, molecule by molecule, dissolving into glittering clouds of atoms that scattered into the void. The bridge of Zorthak's flagship fell into suffocating silence. Monroe's voice broke it, almost casually, as though nothing remarkable had happened. "Phase-state technology," she explained, "lets our ships exist between states of matter. We figured it out centuries ago studying quantum mechanics. It's handy." She smiled faintly. Hard to defend against something that can step through your defenses entirely. Zorthak had no words. This wasn't simply advanced technology. This was sorcery. Witchcraft. Science so far beyond Crexian understanding it may as well have been magic. Monroe clapped her hands lightly, the sound unnervingly cheerful. So, she continued, here's my counteroffer. You take your fleet, turn around, and go home. You renew the treaty, this time for 10,000 years, and we'll all pretend this little misunderstanding never happened. Zorthak's throat felt tight as he managed to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. And if we refuse? For the first time, Monroe's playful mask slipped. Her face hardened. Her tone turned cold. Then we finish our demonstration, she said. And the Crexian Empire will need a new Supreme Commander. And about 100,000 new warships. Supreme Commander Zorthak had never retreated in his entire 300-year career. The idea itself was alien to Crexian doctrine. There wasn't even a proper word for it in their language. The closest phrase translated awkwardly to strategic repositioning for future conquest. A term so obscure that most officers had never heard it used aloud. And yet here he was, ordering the greatest armada in the known universe to withdraw from a single star system. All ships reverse course, he commanded, each word tasting like ash on his tongue. Maintain defensive formation. No aggressive actions. His bridge crew exchanged stunned glances but didn't hesitate. Even the most bloodthirsty among them had witnessed 20 Crexian warships dissolve into dust. None wished to join them. The human fleet is holding position, Tactical Officer Jex reported quietly. They are not pursuing. On the main view screen, Monroe nodded approvingly. Wise choice, Commander. Your ships are free to leave unharmed. This isn't over, Zorthak growled, pride forcing the words past clenched mandibles. The Crexian Empire does not surrender. Of course not, Monroe replied smoothly, the edge of her smirk returning. You're just strategically repositioning for future conquest. Her tone dripped with mockery. We understand completely. Zorthak's upper eyes narrowed. You speak our language? Monroe smiled faintly. We speak all 317 languages across the Crexian Empire, she said. Even your 22 classified military dialect. Linguistic analysis was one of our earliest research projects. You've been spying on us, Zorthak accused, fury lacing his words. Despite the treaty. Monroe laughed again, that same infuriating, confident laugh that had haunted him for weeks. The treaty forbade us from coming within 5 light-years of your territory, she said. It didn't say a word about watching from farther away. Zorthak's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Remote observation across thousands of light-years? Impossible. Quantum entanglement communication, Monroe said, her voice like a teacher explaining a simple lesson to a stubborn student. Instantaneous data transfer across infinite distance. We've had tiny observation probes scattered through your empire for about 950 years. She tilted her head, her smirk returning. They're about the size of a dust particle. Don't bother looking for them. Zorthak's rage burned hot, nearly blinding him. You dare mock the greatest empire the universe has ever known? Greatest. Monroe echoed thoughtfully. By what measure? Her tone was sharp now. Territory? Yes, you've claimed more than we have. But technology? Resource use? Science? Medicine? She gave a tiny shrug. You're lagging by centuries. You lie. Zorthak roared. No species advances so quickly. Most don't, Monroe agreed. But most species don't have our combination of short lifespans, relentless curiosity, and existential dread. Her gaze hardened. We always knew extinction could come at any moment. It's amazing what humans can accomplish when properly motivated. As the Crexian fleet limped away, humiliated, Director Lormar approached Zorthak's command chair and lowered his voice. Supreme Commander, I've been analyzing the human vessels. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our archives, and their sheer numbers. He hesitated. Even with automation, building billions of ships would require resources far beyond what a single solar system should offer. Zorthak's eyes narrowed. Your point, Director? I believe, Lormar said carefully, they've mastered matter conversion on a fundamental level. They're creating ships from pure energy, perhaps even from vacuum itself. Zorthak froze. If that were true, if humans could turn energy into matter at will, there would be no limit to their fleet. Endless armadas, endless weapons, endless soldiers. Admiral Monroe, Zorthak said finally, forcing civility into his voice, before we depart, I must ask, why did your ancestors sign the treaty in the first place? If not for protection, then for what? Monroe's expression softened slightly, her mocking smirk fading. Honestly, she said. Her voice was quieter now. Pity. Pity. Zorthak repeated, stunned. The weight of humiliation. Our first contact specialists came to a conclusion centuries ago, Admiral Monroe said evenly, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. Your species is a developmental dead end. Your biological and cultural evolution has already peaked. Without outside influence, you'll remain stagnant, technologically and culturally, for thousands of years. Her gaze hardened, and for the first time, there was no trace of humor in her eyes. Our ancestors believed 1,000 years of peace might give you the chance to advance on your own, to catch up, so that one day we could meet as equals. Clearly, she allowed the smallest pause, they overestimated you. The bridge went silent. Not the silence of shock nor of fear. This was heavier, the silence of humiliation. Every officer, every warrior aboard felt the sting of her words, because they all knew she wasn't wrong. The Crexian Empire hadn't birthed a true technological breakthrough in generations. Their progress had always come through conquest, stealing innovations from the civilizations they crushed, never creating their own. We will return, Zorthak said, his voice cracking despite himself. We will study. We will advance. And we will return. Monroe's smirk softened, replaced by something unexpected, sincerity. I truly hope you do, she said, her tone quiet but genuine. The galaxy needs the Crexians to evolve beyond conquest. There are threats out there that demand cooperation, not domination. Threats neither humans nor Crexians can face alone. Zorthak's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, confusion creasing his features. What threats? He demanded. Across 12 galaxies, we have never encountered a force more powerful than ourselves. Because they don't want to be found, Monroe replied cryptically, her voice suddenly quiet. Not yet. But they're watching. Just as we've been watching you. Before Zorthak could demand answers, the human fleet moved. Not toward the retreating Crexians, but into a pattern so intricate it seemed to ripple through the very fabric of space. What are they doing? Krell asked, her voice rising as her fingers flew across her console. I don't, began Lormar, then froze mid-sentence. His mandibles clicked sharply. Supreme Commander, he whispered, they're generating a gravitational anomaly. A massive one. On the view screen, billions of human ships spun in perfect synchronization, an artificial gravity well of impossible scale forming in their wake. Space itself warped visibly, twisting like a living thing. Monroe's voice cut through the awe. This is just a small demonstration, she said almost lightly. Something to remember us by. The vortex of ships collapsed inward, and for a heartbeat, it looked like a new star had been born. A blinding flash filled the bridge, the view screen dimmed automatically. When the light faded, where the fleet had been, now floated Saturn. A Saturn. An exact duplicate of the gas giant, complete with rings, conjured in minute. Did they just make a planet? Navigator Zell whispered, her voice tinged with something close to worship. Monroe's image flickered slightly as she spoke again. We'll be in touch, Commander Zorthak. When you're ready for a real conversation about the future. Until then. Her eyes sharpened slightly. I suggest you use your time wisely. The transmission ended. The Crexian fleet limped from the Sol system, battered in spirit though not in hull. On the flagship's bridge, Zorthak sat motionless, staring at the new Saturn shrinking in the distance. For the first time in his long life, Supreme Commander Zorthak truly understood what it meant to be primitive. The journey back to Crexia Prime took 3 months. 3 months of silence. 3 months of shame. 3 months of Zorthak isolating himself in his quarters, reviewing every scrap of intelligence they possessed on humans. Searching for a flaw. A weakness. He found none. When the Armada finally reached the Crexian homeworld, Zorthak steeled himself for disgrace. He expected to be stripped of command. Perhaps executed. The Crexian Empire did not tolerate defeat. Instead, the High Council summoned him privately, away from the eyes of the masses. "Tell us everything," commanded Arch-Councillor Vexmer, the oldest living Crexian and the figurehead of the Empire itself. "Leave nothing out." Zorthak told them everything. The humans' laughter. The hidden fleet in Saturn's rings. The phase shift technology. The matter creation. The duplicate Saturn born in moments. With each revelation, the Council's faces grew darker. And these humans claim there are greater threats than themselves? Councillor Drez asked when Zorthak finished. "Yes, Councillor," Zorthak said gravely. Though they offered no details. "Bluff, perhaps," suggested Councillor Krell. "A tactic to keep us from focusing on defeating them." Zorthak slowly shook his head. No. Admiral Monroe had no reason to lie. She had already proven her superiority. "Then what do you propose, Supreme Commander?" Vexmer leaned forward, her voice heavy with the weight of the question. "What course of action best serves the Empire now?" Zorthak had spent 3 months turning this question over in his mind. His answer would shape not only his fate, but the destiny of the Crexian people. "I propose," he said, his voice low but firm, "we learn." "Learn?" Vexmer repeated, incredulous. "Explain." "The humans were right," Zorthak admitted, the words tasting like acid. "We've grown stagnant. Complacent. For 10,000 years we've conquered instead of creating. We've stolen technology instead of forging our own. It's left us vulnerable." Murmurs of outrage rippled through the chamber, but Vexmer silenced them with a single, gnarled hand. "I propose we restructure our priorities," Zorthak continued. "Less focus on endless conquest. More focus on science. Innovation. We must close the technological gap between ourselves and the humans." "You suggest we abandon conquest?" Councillor Traz growled, his voice a low snarl. "The very foundation of our society?" "Not abandon," Zorthak corrected calmly. "Postpone. A century. Maybe 2. Pour those resources into research and development instead." "And the humans?" Vexmer asked, her tone sharp. "What if they leave their solar system to conquer, as we once did?" The spark of curiosity. "They won't," Zorthak said with absolute conviction. "If conquest were their goal, they would have begun 1,000 years ago. They wield a different kind of power, one we don't yet understand." The council chamber fell silent. The weight of his words pressed over every leader present like a heavy cloak. Finally, Arch-Councillor Vexmer spoke, her ancient voice low but steady. "There is wisdom in your proposal, Supreme Commander," she said. "Painful wisdom, but wisdom nonetheless." Her 4 eyes locked on Zorthak. "But such a fundamental shift will not come easily. There will be resistance. Many will call it cowardice." "Let them," Zorthak said firmly, his voice resonating through the chamber. "I have seen what awaits us if we stay on our current path, a war we cannot win. Perhaps even extinction. I would rather be branded a coward than lead our people to annihilation." Vexmer nodded slowly, her gnarled hand tightening on her staff. "Very well," she said. "We will put your proposal to a vote. But first, There is another matter to address. She gestured to a guard, who activated a wall panel. Bring in the visitor. The chamber doors parted with a hiss. A human stepped through. Not Admiral Monroe, but a man. Tall, lean, dark-skinned, hair trimmed close to his scalp. He wore no military uniform, only simple earth-colored clothing. This is Dr. Jackson Webb, Vexmer introduced. He arrived yesterday, alone, in a vessel no larger than a personal shuttle. How did he reach Crexia Prime? Zorthak demanded, his mandibles clicking sharply. Our defenses were quite impressive, Webb interrupted pleasantly, his tone almost conversational. I particularly admired the autonomous minds in the Cygnus approach. Very creative. He stepped forward, extending his hand. Supreme Commander Zorthak, I presume? Zorthak hesitated, then extended one massive appendage. Webb clasped it briefly, the strange gesture oddly respectful. Admiral Monroe sends her regards, Webb said, smiling faintly. Why are you here, human? Zorthak growled. To offer assistance, Webb replied simply. And to deliver this. From his coat pocket, he produced a small device, no larger than a Crexian data crystal. It pulsed softly with blue light. Zorthak stared at it. What is it? The complete scientific and technological history of humanity, Webb said, as if stating something ordinary. Every discovery, every invention, every theory, from the wheel to phase shift technology. Everything except weapons, of course. Those you'll have to figure out on your own, if you insist on having them. Zorthak stared at the device, disbelief etched across his features. Why would you give us this? Webb smiled, and Zorthak was struck by how much that smile resembled Monroe's. Not quite a smirk, but close. The smile of a species utterly sure of itself. Because evolution requires competition, Webb explained. And for the past 1,000 years we've had none. Yes, we advanced, rapidly. But without external pressure, without other perspectives, we've become, he paused, searching for the word. Inbred. Intellectually speaking. You want us as competitors? Zorthak asked, suspicion lacing his voice. We want you as colleagues, Webb corrected gently. Partners in something bigger than either of us. The greater project of galactic civilization. The threats Admiral Monroe mentioned? They're real. And they'll require more than human ingenuity to survive. Vexmer leaned forward, her voice sharp. What threats, precisely? Webb's expression darkened. There are places between galaxies where light behaves strangely, he said. Regions where the laws of physics bend and flex. He paused, and the levity left his voice entirely. We've studied them for centuries. Something is coming. Something old. Something that looks at both our species, and sees nothing more than bacteria on a cosmic petri dish. And you believe the Crexian Empire would aid humanity against such a thing? Counselor Drez scoffed. After the humiliation of our fleet? Webb's tone remained calm, almost serene. I believe you'll help yourselves, he said. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. One both our species share. And I believe that with time, and with this, he nodded to the glowing device in Zorthak's claw, you might even become the allies we need. Zorthak looked down at the crystal. It held the entire history of human science. Could change everything. The balance of power. The Empire's hierarchies. Its economy. Its entire way of life. It could also save them from irrelevance. We accept your offering, Dr. Webb, Zorthak said at last, his voice quiet but steady. And your challenge? Webb nodded, satisfied. Excellent. In that case, I'm authorized to propose a new treaty. Not one of separation, but of limited cooperation. Scientific exchange. Cultural dialogue. Preparation for what's coming. And in military matters? Zorthak asked cautiously. Webb's expression turned serious again. Let's just say how quickly we share our defensive technologies will depend entirely on how quickly you abandon your offensive ambitions. The meaning was unmistakable. The humans were offering a path forward, but trust would have to be earned. As the council debated terms of the unprecedented treaty, Zorthak studied the human. Not with hatred, not with resentment, but with something he hadn't felt in centuries. Curiosity. How had humans advanced so fast? What drove them to explore instead of conquer? What could the Crexian Empire learn from a species that had never left its own star system, and yet had surpassed them? And most puzzling of all, why did they laugh? Why, even when faced with annihilation, did humans still laugh? Webb caught his gaze, and there it was again, that same glint of amusement. That same inexplicable confidence. Perhaps, Zorthak thought, that would be the first mystery they'd solve. The strange psychology of a species that responded to war not with fear, not with rage, but with laughter. For the first time since his humiliating retreat from Earth, Zorthak felt something stir within him. Not vengeance, not shame, but the spark he hadn't felt since his youth, when he first gazed up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond. Curiosity. And as Dr. Webb outlined his vision for joint research, Supreme Commander Zorthak, conqueror of worlds, breaker of fleets, found himself looking forward to a future where the Crexian Empire might become something more than conquerors, something worthy of standing beside humanity. When the real war began,